Are you finally starting to take your music production and your songwriting seriously? Do you think that you have what it takes to make a living in the music industry? Well, this marketing podcast is here to help music producers and artists to begin building a foundation to grow their music company from the bedroom to the boardroom. And now, here's your host, Brennan Lunan.
What's going on, guys? Brennan Lunan here at Music Marketing Podcast. This is episode 11. Thank you so much for tuning in with me each week. I really appreciate your guys' time and appreciate the feedback that I've been getting. You know, I'm always here to help. If you have questions, if you have any ideas, or if you have, any ideas for my podcast topics, I'm always willing to listen. I'm always willing to engage you guys. Today, I want to talk a little bit about motivation and inspiration. And, as producers and artists and musicians, we all have our problems as far as motivation goes. And a lot of it has to do with, a variety of things, a lot of times it's mental health. A lot of people are depressed and dealing with life and dealing with a lot of, heavy topics. Sometimes it's just, you don't feel it. Sometimes you feel like, I just don't really want to, I don't want to do anything today. I kind of want to just fall back and not record it. Listen, and that's fine. Just understand that you can't make this, an excuse that you use all the time, So, motivation is a funny thing. And somebody, once told me that the only motivation you'd ever need is the fear of being broke. And I totally agree with it because for me personally, I've been broker than broke. When you start owing banks money for not having any money, yeah, that kind of broke. And, there's times where I was flooded with cash. So, there's both sides of the coin, and I was able to witness both of them and see where the good life was and where the unsatisfactory and undesirable life, was as far as on the other side of the spectrum, where you're freaking too broke to even rub two pennies together, So motivation became kind of an obsession of mine. I started to, listen to everybody from Gary Vee to, Tony Robbins and all the gurus and all the, motivational speakers and reading books. And I realized one thing. I realized that oftentimes when we look for motivation, we look for it externally. We look for somebody to help us get motivated. We look for somebody to give us a reason to get motivated. And I understand that because, yes, motivation is often tough to come by, and we tend to pass things up because we don't have the proper motivation to kind of move forward and, continue the cycle. So I wanted to talk to you guys today about some things that I do, to motivate myself, again, besides looking at my bank account when it's, damn near empty. Motivation shouldn't come only when you need it. Motivation should always exist, right? And unfortunately, for a lot of people, that's not the case because a lot of people just allow themselves and allow their emotions to kind of weigh them down and not have the desire to get up every day and, actually chase their success or whatever it may be. And again, I get that too, and I'm not here to judge anybody. I'm not here to point fingers and say, hey, you should have done this and that. That's really not what this is about. What this is about is understanding that motivation, just like anything else, is a skill, and I hate to put it like that because, I know some people might disagree because, motivation to them is, external, which, for a lot of people it is. But a lot of times you have to look at motivation as something that comes from within and something that drives you kind of like a steam engine, where you're feeding it fuel and it keeps burning and burning and creating the power and getting the wheels rolling and making sure that you continue is often a struggle for people, because consistency and continuity is tough, it's not easy. It's not easy to continue to every day push forward and hustle and, set goals and try to succeed and trying to make it in life. A lot of times it's just easier to fall back and watch TV, play video games. And I get it. We all have downtimes. We all have cycles in our year or our lives that, end up being kind of like a slow production time, where you're not necessarily looking to do a lot. you're laying around, you're feeling kind of bad, you're not really motivated at all to do anything. Maybe it's the winter blues, maybe it's events in your life. But as musicians and producers, you got to remember that our skill, even though it's like riding a bike and you're never going to totally forget it, there's still that whole, spectrum of quote unquote being able to ride the bike. Yeah, sure, you could pedal, but can you go downhill? Can you ride down a mountain? And if you do it all the time, then eventually, yes, you'll be able to go downhill a mountain. But if you don't, you'll start to just be able to pedal in place and fall over and need training wheels. And I don't know how long you could go through that, because a lot of times if you let something go, especially due to lack of motivation, you start losing the skill. For example, I don't get as much time to produce music as I wanted to. I have people offering me placements, opportunities, and you would think that I should jump all over it. And I try to, but I have other responsibilities like paying clients and projects that need to be accomplished and finished. I can't necessarily put that off to go chase placements because this is, it's kind of one of those things where it's a business when I do my graphics and web and everything else I do. On the other hand, placements, you kind of do a lot of the work and you send it in and you hope. And I'm not saying that as kind of any way of a bad thing, because to me, there's a difference between doing placement opportunities or like entering contests. You know what I mean? Because a placement opportunity is a potential of making a relationship with somebody and getting to know a music supervisor and building something with them as far as a relationship business wise and, getting more opportunities. As far as, my projects go, I get paid to make websites, to do marketing, to do advertising. And I can't necessarily, trade that up because when money is necessary to pay bills, and you have no idea what you're going to make from a placement. So it's kind of a toss up where you have to decide what's more important, paying your bills or getting placements. And, if you love what you're doing, you'll find a way to make money at it. You'll find a way to make it your career. I happen to love marketing and advertising as much as I love music. I like music better, but marketing and advertising brings me a paycheck, which helps me stay afloat. So the motivation for me in finding, jobs, gigs, so on and so forth is financial freedom. I want to be able to pay my bills and do whatever the hell I want to do, whether it's travel or vacation or just sitting in the studio all day, just cranking out tunes. And I learned a pretty nifty skill when I was living in Northern California. And that skill was how to self motivate and how to force myself to go out there and just crush it, go out there and find solutions to problems, find workarounds, detours, whatever you want to call it, whatever was placed in my way. I had to make sure that I overcame it. And it wasn't really an option for me as like, well, do I do it? Do I not do it? You know what I mean? So it wasn't really a choice kind of in my mind. It was sort of like, when there's something you have to do, you just do it. You don't question it. You don't ask yourself the reason for it, or you don't debate with your lazy self about getting up off the couch. You just get up and you go handle your business. You got to remember that feeling. You got to remember that mind state. Because whenever you're able to just get up and go do something because it's almost second nature, that's because you probably have done it so many times that it just became a habit. And they say you need about 28 days, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. 28 days of just consistency to make something into a habit. So you could turn something like working out, and I'm really terrible at working out. Thank God I'm not too fat. But, if you could push yourself to go to the gym every day for 28 days, or within reason, if you go 3, 4, 5 days a week, it eventually will become a habit, and you'll eventually rely on it as something that you have to do, and you can't skip days, and you can't cheat. You have to do it because it's almost a part of you now. And so I kind of applied that technique to business and to running my companies or doing the gigs that I do or working the job that I work. And it's just one of those things where you just kind of have to do it, right? You don't necessarily need excuse to do it. You don't need to be asked a million times. You just do it. the way that I motivate myself is I don't even give myself the option of not doing it as a possibility, because if I don't do it, nobody's going to do it for me. And that's kind of an immigrant's whole like mantra, you know, if you don't do something when you come to this country and you know you fight to get into the states and you fight to get across the border and you finally get in and you know you got all your paperwork and you paid all your fees and everything's done. You get into this country and it's supposed to be paved with gold and it's supposed to be, you know, easy to make your American dream happen. When in reality, it's one of the toughest places to do it. Sure, the opportunity is there, but the fighting for opportunities is crazy. And there's people out there that don't have a motivation problem because they have families to feed, because they have roofs to put over their heads, because they have responsibilities, they have to pay bills. And I feel like a lot of people that I come in contact with either don't have these responsibilities or have them and don't really take them seriously. And always, you know, these are the people that are always going to be crying about something or bitching about this or complaining or giving excuses. And I hate excuses, man. I hate giving people excuses. When I do, I feel terrible about it. I don't really, you know, I'm not proud of myself. But I also try to make sure that I minimize the excuses by just kind of buckling down and saying, you know what, man, screw this. I'm going to go and handle my business. I'm going to take care of it. And I like that because it becomes part of who you are as a person. It becomes part of your fabric of your humanity, that, you know, you become a hard worker and you're not giving yourself passes for things you don't want to do, and you're handling all the business and not just some of it, leaving things undone and leaving projects unfinished. I personally think that if you're going to look for motivation and you're going to look for it elsewhere, look at your own life. Your life should motivate you to do something, right? To do better. Because a lot of times our lives are, you know, especially if we're not really motivated, our lives show it. Our lives are empty, or they're unfulfilling, or they're boring, and we're just not happy with how things are going. And we allow that to kind of slow us down and be an anchor. And it just drags along the seafloor as you're trying to just swim forward and, you know, cover ground. It's just keeping you, you know, it's keeping you from going at speed and holding you back. And you got to make sure your motivation is not a problem. And it's just like it's like muscle memory. You have to do things when you don't want to do them. You know, if you run and you're a runner and you like to run on sunny days, well, guess what? You better learn how to run on rainy days too. You know, and that's the way I view life in general, that you can't have the sunshine all the time. You need some rain. You need that contrast. And for me, that's motivation, knowing that those days are coming, knowing that there is going to be a point where if I don't save my money and just blow it frivolously, it's going to be depleted. And when I need it, I'm not going to have it, or, you know, I'm not going to be able to pay my bills and so on and so forth. So you have to kind of pair your, you know, need for motivation with also foresight and goal planning. And I noticed that, you know, when you do plan and you create goals for yourself, you know, I want to do this in 6 months, or you have a 1 year plan or a 3 year or a 5 year plan, whatever it is, or you even have just like an exit strategy and you say, okay, you know, I want to run this business to a point where it's making $1 million a year and I want to sell it. That's what you want. And that's your goal. You know what your goal is. And so, you know, a nice little tip that I always give to people I work with or my clients is work backwards, right? Once you figure out what your goal is, work backwards. Start tracing the steps back to the point where you are currently. Because if you know where the destination is, all you have to do is just figure out how to get there. And it's sort of like that. I don't know if it's just me, but the feeling you get when you're coming home from somewhere versus when you're going out, it always seems like coming home takes quicker time because, you know, you're antsy to get home or you're not really paying that much attention. And so it always feels like, you know, getting home is quicker. And so I apply that philosophy to my goal planning. You know, I start at the end. I know what I want to do. And then I say, well, how do I get there? Right? What's the step before that? And the step before that? And the step before that? And that allows me to kind of clearly define a path that I have to follow. And so when I trace it back to all the way where I'm at currently, then I have a roadmap. And then you really have no excuse, because then you really have all the answers and all you have to do is execute. And execution for me, I feel like, is way more important than ideas, way more important than talent. you know, creativity, anything like that, because execution is actually firing, on all cylinders and getting things done, as opposed to sitting there talking about it and imagining it, or, just coming up with ideas and just falling back. And a lot of people, and I'm like that with music. I'll come up with a million ideas. Sometimes I won't finish all the tracks, and I give myself a hard time about it because I don't want to be like that. I want to finish all the tracks that I work on, but that's not the case, and I'm kind of ashamed of it. But I want to make sure that I put the effort into making tracks that get finished, that get put in places like libraries, for licensing, things of that nature. And I don't want to give myself any passes. I don't want to give myself any sort of, you know, I don't want to give myself any sort of space, an inch, a foot, because I don't want to allow myself to get comfortable with being comfortable. And that's another big philosophy that I kind of keep and use. Don't be comfortable. Learn to live with being uncomfortable, because there's nothing more motivating than being uncomfortable. Nothing. I mean, if you're not motivated by being uncomfortable, I don't know what will motivate you. For me, being uncomfortable means not having my bills paid. That's uncomfortable. Not having, money to go out and take my wife out for dinner or for whatever, for a night out. That's uncomfortable. And I learned not to live with it as a sort of like a roommate where I just kind of ignore it. I learned to live in it, meaning that I learned to live with the discomfort because that's a place that I like to operate from. Being uncomfortable makes you motivated because it makes you want to get out of the situation that you're in. And so I often find a lot of people get themselves in situations like very easy jobs that don't challenge them. And at the same time, these are the jobs that people never progress and they never move on to higher roles, more responsibility, and they stay in the same place. It's sort of like when you're stuck in the mud and your tires are just spinning. And these people are just gently spinning their tires. They're not really concerned. They're not really willing to go and challenge themselves. And so their jobs become a source. Maybe down the line, maybe they're content with their jobs because they're allowed to go and do whatever afterwards, and that, they don't have to worry about the job. But after a while, that kind of job will become just like a trap. You'll end up just sitting there and waiting to get out of it to go do something else. Now, if you have a hobby outside of work that really keeps you busy and that's your focus, cool. If you could find a way to make that into a career, that's even better. But for people that don't have that, but they also don't have a job that motivates them, it's like, how do you give yourself that much room to operate and just be lazy and be unmotivated and never achieve anything? I get it, depression sometimes keeps us down, anxiety, a lot of us are dealing with mental issues, which is completely fine. And I'm not here to judge anybody because I have my own problems. We all do. But you also have to remember that there's things you can do to make you more motivated even when you feel that low. A lot of times I look at myself when I'm, if I'm deeply depressed or whatever's going on in my life or I'm just having issues, I look at myself in the mirror and I ask myself, is this really how I want to spend my time? And forcing myself to really answer that question, sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes I want to be depressed and I'm happy in my little cocoon and my little depression bubble. But most of the time I'm not. Most of the time I want to get out of it and I want to go back to doing the things that I love doing and being content with life. And so I made it a point to make sure that when I'm feeling like that I try to get up and I try to either go for a walk or, go do something in the studio or create something, and just you need some type of um a reward that'll snap you out of whatever kind of mood you're in. And sometimes that reward could be writing, a good song, making a dope beat, going and writing some cool lyrics, whatever it is that you do. that sometimes that's what you need. So you have to make sure that you constantly practice self motivation. And you know what? Like Gary Vee, or Tony Robbins, all these guys out there that are doing these motivation speeches, they're great. I would love to be that type of person where I could go out and motivate people through public speaking or whatever. That's a goal of mine. I want to learn to do that. This podcast is training me to think continuously and talk continuously and make sense. And, so, but the thing is, those guys, and what a lot of people don't understand is those guys are using you as just like cattle. They're using you as warm bodies to stack up their analytics and stack up their stats and prove to advertisers that they draw traffic. And so, yes, they're helpful. Yes, they utilize you guys and they exploit you guys, which again isn't a bad word. But you also have to remember that you don't really get anything out of it as far as actual like physical, even intellectual things. Sure, you might learn something about it, but those guys never end up giving you anything important in their free seminars or webinars. It's always just some fluff. It's always things to just get you kind of motivated, but it's not anything that's going to keep you motivated because they're not giving you any kind of a playbook. They're just giving you short little tips on, oh, if you go blah blah blah, you'll be motivated. That's cool, and some people like that, and I don't want to judge them for it, but you got to remember that these people are using you so they could get rich, and they're not really giving you anything. So what are you really getting? Somebody kind of telling you through the internet video to be motivated, but what's going to motivate you? Now you're stuck right back where you're at. So I feel like, and I'm not here to pretend like I'm going to motivate you to do anything. I just want you to know that, it's okay to be uncomfortable. You should learn to live inside of that because being uncomfortable is a great motivator. It's okay to be depressed sometimes because we all go through bad times. We all go through things that, kind of tear us down and weigh us down, and we can't necessarily just pop back up and start working and start making, huge gains. But you want to make sure that you understand as, a person, as either a professional or a newbie, you understand that the muscle memory of you constantly doing the same thing, when you're depressed, whether it's, and I don't mean the same exact thing, but you force yourself to get out of the cocoon, you force yourself to get out of the bubble, and you say, you know what, this sucks and I feel terrible, but I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna do something. And I don't care how I feel, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna see how I feel afterwards. And so I advise you guys, for anybody who's ever, looking for any kind of motivation to get up and go do something, just go and do it and get it done because you'll feel great after you get it done. And you won't learn or rely on people that provide these, advices or provide these kind of motivational speeches that don't really give you anything except waste your time. And they might give you a quick little buzz, but that's really what it is. It's sort of like, when people do drugs, it's like they just want a quick buzz. They don't want to fix their life. They don't want to, they just want an escape. And so that sometimes kind of fits in the same category with, quick satisfaction, the instant gratification of listening to somebody tell you like, oh, you should go and do this and be motivated and blah, blah, blah. And you feel that jolt of energy and you feel like going and you feel like doing something. But then you begin to rely on people to tell you when to do things and how to do things. And it's just, that's not really motivation. You just become a pawn. So just make sure that, you find something either within you or you find something that you're, either afraid of or you just don't want to see happen. Like, for me, it's just financial mostly because, I'm at a point in my life where, finances play a big, if not like a humongous role in my life. So for me, it's finances. So for me to remain motivated, I basically look at my bank account. And if I don't have, at least a comma in it, I'm in a bad spot. And that's a lot of the people in the United States are, living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, we all hustle. We all do what we have to do. We have 2-3 jobs. This is where you get the motivation from. You get motivation from people who, hustle and you look up to them, or you get it from within. I advise you to look inside of you and find something that you could actually be motivated by from within and not have to rely on anybody else. Being self-sufficient is really important. So when you guys get depressed, when you guys feel down and you don't feel like doing anything, just remember that the problem is still going to be there. and you're still going to feel like shit. And you're still going to have things that need to be done. So you could put them off and you could just allow yourself to be depressed and allow yourself to, cry yourself a river. Or you could go out there and you could start, fixing your problems. And as hard as it is, and I know it's hard, and I'm not trying to discount anything or make you guys seem like, you're being weak or whatever, but if it's hard, the harder I almost feel like the better. Because the more you could accomplish, even though it's hard, the better you'll feel at the end because you've accomplished something difficult, especially when you're handicapped. And I don't mean like, like a handicapped person, but I mean like when you're being set back by whatever it is, whether it's depression, anxiety, whether it's, you know, issues with money, or if your girlfriend or boyfriend broke up with you, or, whatever. There's always going to be times in our lives that are going to just weigh us down and make us feel like shit. And I feel that if you allow those things to really set you back and you allow yourself to lose focus and be unmotivated, what's going to happen is you're just going to continuously find yourself in the same space. And being that I'm, a person of progress, I'm a progressive. I don't want to call myself a liberal or, a conservative, but I am a progressive. I like to make, progress. I feel that, you can't allow yourself to be stagnant because nothing else in the world is. Everything always changes. So if you're depressed now, you might be able to, find an answer to it through action. And whatever it is that you need done, just go get it done. So that's kind of my rant on the whole entire, motivation topic. I kind of feel that a lot of people, sometimes think that they need external motivation when all they have to do is really just look at their life. And that's the moral of the story is look within yourself, find things that you need fixed, and go and fix them. Because if you don't, those things are just going to rot and they're going to fester and it's going to get worse. Things don't just happen. You have to make them happen. So find one thing that you like to do and do it. Find one thing that you hate to do that you need to do and do that. And you will see that once you start stacking these wins, and they don't have to be big wins, they could be very small, tiny wins. As long as you do the things that you need to do and start crossing things off your list, not only will you feel better about yourself, but you'll also kind of ride that wave onto the next project. And, they told me when I used to sell cars, the best time to sell a car is when you just sold one because you're pumped and you're motivated and you want to make sure that you continue that wave. So use that energy of, accomplishing your goals to motivate you because nothing else will. You can watch Gary Vee all day, every day, but he's not going to motivate you to go out there and start a great business. It takes a lot more than just Gary Vee telling you to hustle. So, if you have any questions, and I always offer my help, and it's always available to people. If you have questions, hit me up on Instagram at EQ Productions. That's on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you guys have any questions regarding advertising, such as Facebook ads or Instagram ads, I do take on clients and I do mentor people, and I teach Facebook advertising. So if you have questions about that, please send me a text or shoot me an email. You could always reach me, like I said, on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook at EQ Productions, or you could check me out on my website at www.eqproductions.com. You can find all my episodes of my podcast on my website, as well as articles about marketing in the music industry and otherwise. Thank you so much, guys, for always tuning in with me. I appreciate all my listeners and, the feedback that comes with it. I need to hear from you guys. I can't make this podcast better unless you guys send me feedback and tell me if you like it or you hate it or you hate my voice or I should back up or whatever it is that you feel about my podcast. I want to hear it. There's no such thing as bad constructive criticism. It only makes you, a better professional. So I want to hear from you guys. Leave me comments, shoot me emails. You can reach me right from Instagram again or from Facebook. Thank you so much again for tuning in this week. This is Brennan Lunan at Music Marketing Podcast. This is episode 11. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you guys next week.